Now, while the effects of climate change and the value of a carbon tax are still being debated here in Australia, over in the South Pacific island of Kiribati, that's already facing climate change on its doorstep.
In his latest film, The Hungry Tide, writer-director Tom Zubrycki looks at the human toll of climate change and makes a call for action. The film is screening as part of the Melbourne International Film Festival, and Tom Zubrycki joins us now in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
What drew you to the story of this tiny island of Kiribati?
Well, I wanted to make a film about climate change, and I heard that Kiribati was one of the, well, I think the first sovereign nation to disappear as a result of sea level rise. At least this was the prediction a few years ago, and I think it's still the case. So I sought out to try and personalise the story, and came across an Australian woman, Maria Simon, who lived in Sydney, who had strong family connections back in Kiribati, and she had this enormous challenge of telling the world about the story of a sinking nation. So I followed her for 2 years.
And tell us about how her character, her belief about climate change developed over that time.
Well, it started off, she was very shy, addressing a group of school kids, and from there she grew with confidence, and went to the Copenhagen Climate Conference and ended up in Cancun, and it was great to see that how she engaged with the issue. But at the same time, the film sees her as also being very challenged by a very needy family back on the islands. Just when the film starts, her mother dies, and she's about to go to Kiribati, but she misses out by about a week to see her mother. And then a few months later, her father's quite ill. And it's this tyranny of distance. She's so far away, yet she wants to be there. And at the same time, she has this incredibly important challenge to fight for her nation, essentially.
And how does she reconcile those two duties that she sees to her family and also to this cause that she's fighting for?
Well, that's, I think, for the viewer to ascertain. I think it's difficult for her, but I think she does a very fine balancing act, and I think she actually comes through in the end as being a very sort of, you know, quite a woman who with stature, who really will now go on and take on that fundamental challenge that I spoke about earlier.
The film also highlights how the people of Kiribati, and indeed a lot of the other low-lying nations, feel as though they're the silent voices in this global debate about the effect of climate change. They're effectively where the rubber hits the road.
Very much so. I think their calls have been pretty much ignored, and the tragedy is that as we speak, you know, seawalls continue to crumble. The funds they have, the resources to adapt to climate change are minuscule, really. They were depending on the Green Climate Fund to come online. This was one of the promises, that undertakings that were made at the Copenhagen conference, and they still haven't been fulfilled. So the poor president there is really embattled, you know, what to do next. With, you know, and over the time I was there, I could really see the visible changes.
We have a clip from the film The Hungry Tide now. Let's take a look.
Tom, you're a very experienced filmmaker. What were some of the challenges you encountered in making this documentary?
Well, of all these documentaries, which are essentially following an evolving situation over time, you've got to be there for these right moments. I certainly wanted to be there for the Copenhagen Climate Conference, but I wasn't predicting, you know, dramas in Maria's life. I mean, I was lucky enough to be there filming her, talking to her family on the island, and they have to talk through a CB radio connection. It's incredible. And the time I was filming with her, she found out that her father was becoming very ill, and you know, it's moments like these that are, I think, quite important to the story and really engage the viewer emotionally. And this is essentially what I want to do, is not just tell the story about climate change, but to get the viewer to feel personally about the effects of climate change on the people there and also the people who are trying to deal with it politically and put it on the table internationally. And I think Kiribati, being such a small nation, it needs, I suppose, all the help it can get. This film, I hope, will, to some extent, get people talking and get it up to that international level.
And if you're interested in finding out, it is on at the Melbourne International Film Festival. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
You're watching ABC News Breakfast.